Good morning. We'll call the meeting to order. If you please rise, we have the invocation, Supervisor Bishop, and the Pledge of Allegiance, Supervisor Angus.
Heavenly Father, you are our wisdom and our strength. We ask for your guiding hand to lead us through this meeting. May we approach our task with wisdom, and may we approach our members with respect. May our conduct create an environment of cooperation and kindness. Thank you for helping us accomplish our work this day, and we ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Board of Supervisors may, by motion, recess into executive session to receive legal advice from the Board's attorney on any item contained in the agenda pursuant to the Arizona Revised Statutes. At this time, I'd like to call for motion action to call for an executive session to be held October 15th, 2018 at 9 a.m. for discussion and consultation with legal counsel in accordance with the Arizona Revised Statutes 38-431.03, portions A, 3, 4, and 7, to discuss items noticed on the agenda with an asterisk.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. Supervisor Johnson on the phone.
Supervisor Johnson, are you there?
I'm here.
Very good. Just didn't want to overlook your presence there. At this time, Sheriff Schuster has requested that we move his item, which is on the consent agenda, to the forefront of the agenda. He's hosting the State Sheriff's Association today and would like to get out as early as possible. So at this point, I'll be changing the agenda to now do the consent agenda, and then we will go back and do presentations and reports. So, Supervisor Johnson, do you have any items to pull on the consent agenda?
45, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Bishop?
I have none.
Supervisor Angus?
None.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
None.
Okay. Chair would entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda with the exception of items 45 and 49.
I'll make that motion. Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. Supervisor Johnson, item 45.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's just my feeling that until we've done the first treasurer sale, we probably shouldn't look at putting more money in and doing more until we see exactly what we've gotten from the first sale. That was all.
Okay, thank you. Any rebuttal to Supervisor Johnson's request?
Chairman Watson, since Supervisor Johnson has pulled this item, I just wonder if the Treasurer's Office would like to speak to this item at all. Just give them the opportunity to come up and enlighten our citizens as to what the tax deed sale is and when we might see this actually open to the public.
Yes, Supervisor Bishop. Luke Mornian, Senior Management Analyst in the Treasurer's Office. We planned on giving the presentation first. We're going to recap the results of taking approximately 800 parcels through the tax deed process that the board approved last February and last April. Basically, the results of that first bunch of parcels resulted in a net profit to the county general fund. We had several property owners who chose to redeem their parcels basically to pay all the back taxes, fees, and interest owing in order to avoid this foreclosure. So the approximately $150,000 that the board approved for that first grouping of parcels, we spent, the actual money that left the county was about $9,000 in total. We found a bunch of ways to save money as we were taking those parcels through that process, and the net benefit to the county general fund was about $60,000. So I don't know if there's any specific questions you'd like me to answer this time. I'd be happy to.
I think that's excellent, and I'm sure everything will be covered in your presentation here in just a few minutes.
Yes, it will.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Chairman Watson,
Clerk?
if I may, that portion of it was the treasurer's portion, and then the first meeting in November, the remaining parcels from that bunch of them will come before the board for approval, and then it'll kind of go through another process, and then we'll be setting the actual tax deed sale through my office for sometime in the beginning of the year. So while they did make a profit on their end, we won't know what our sale looks like until the beginning of the year.
Right.
And Chairman Watson, I would just add that of the 809 parcels that were approved last spring, we ended up tax deeding 723 of them. And even if none of them sell at the tax deed sale, and we fully expect that many of them will sell, but even if none of them do sell, they still generate a savings to the county each year because we're no longer obligated to print and mail tax statements, late notices, so on and so forth. And we will cover that in our presentation as well.
Okay, I'm sure you will. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any further questions for Luke?
Okay, with that being said, I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. And second. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
No.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now we'll move on down to item number 49, acknowledge the sheriff's intent to obtain 5 armored HMMVs from the LESO program. And we have representatives from the sheriff's office here this morning to make a short presentation.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the board. Let's see if I can figure out how to get this to work. On behalf of the sheriff, I'd like to apologize that he's not here today. He had some travel issues, and hopefully he'll be back in county soon. This is a presentation just regarding the Humvees that the sheriff wants to acquire from the LESO 1033 program, and I'm just here to kind of explain what this program is and why we need these vehicles. The 1033 program was established in 1997 through the National Defense Authority Act. The program is overseen by LESO, which is the Law Enforcement Support Program. By design, the program allows the transfer of excess Department of Defense property to law enforcement agencies across the country. Requisitions cover the gamut of items used by the military, items such as clothing, supplies, tools, rescue equipment, and vehicles, just to name a few. This thing not work? You know, the perception often leads to misunderstandings of the facts. While most people understand the benefits of the LESO program, some view the program as a means to potentially militarize law enforcement. This is simply not the case and is not the intent nor subsequent effect. Thousands of law enforcement agencies rely on government surplus to augment their operational and fiscal shortcomings. The ability to obtain needed serviceable equipment at little or no cost should always be strongly considered. The program is not a mechanism to militarize law enforcement. It affords budget-strapped agencies the ability to obtain necessary equipment at very low cost, significant savings to local taxpayers, ongoing resources for current and future needs, and then crime reduction. Studies show that military aid lowers crime. High visibility tools, gear, and vehicles have a strong and sizable effect on all types of crime. Currently, our office relies on one reconditioned armored vehicle for all our tactical needs countywide. This vehicle has outlived its usefulness and was never designed to provide the necessary level of protection needed. The vehicle will not stop high-capacity rounds of fire, and replacement is critical. One armored vehicle is not sufficient to adequately provide a rapid response based on the logistics of Mojave County. The cost to replace this vehicle within the private sector is estimated in excess of $200,000. We are fortunate to have the ability to obtain 5 Humvees from government surplus. These vehicles are in good working order, and each has less than 6,000 miles of use. 5 vehicles allows us to station 1 in each district for a much more rapid response to high-level, life-threatening incidents. And these are just some photos of our current and only vehicle that we use for tactical operations. And these are some photos of what we're proposing to acquire. In conclusion, every decision we make is based on the welfare of our citizens and our staff. Safety is paramount, and proper safety equipment is vital. I cannot overstate the increased and documented risk to law enforcement personnel over the past decade. This holds true with the increase of critical incidents nationwide involving the general public. The ability to respond rapidly and in the safest manner is the highest priority when dealing with such incidents.
Chairman Watson, may I ask a question?
Certainly.
Okay, are these the same vehicles that we had the Sheriff's Department give back 4 years ago?
No, ma'am. That was an MRAP, and it's a much bigger vehicle,
Okay.
Much more difficult to operate, on highways, roadways, and everything else. These are just, well, they're military style, but they are still Humvee,
Okay.
what people would call Hummers.
I just want on the record, these aren't the same kind of tanks that we
No, ma'am.
asked the Sheriff's Department. How fast do they go?
I'm not 100% sure. I would say, do you have any idea how fast? 50, maybe a little more.
And how many times in the last 2 years have you had to use one of these tactical vehicles, the one tactical vehicle that you have?
I have to look into the... we average about 18 tactical operations per year.
Really? What kind of things would you use it for?
Barricaded subjects, a perfect example would be that individual out on the overpass bridge between here and Nevada. He was in an armored vehicle and armed. It would have been a good tool to use in that particular case. And, they could also be utilized as, search and rescue. They're very capable off-road vehicles. So if we had a critical incident somewhere out where our patrol cars can't get to, it can be utilized in that way as well.
I just want on the record, this isn't the same thing, because we had quite the discussion about it 4 or 5 years ago. So this isn't the same vehicle. These are just more,
it's smaller,
right.
And it's smaller and more,
Okay.
user-friendly, I guess I could say.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
A great deal of versatility. I have one question. Will you be placing one of these vehicles north of the Grand Canyon?
Yes, sir. That is the intention.
And that area up there requires a lot of attention when it comes to rescues, especially in the storm season.
Yes, sir, I absolutely agree.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chairman Watson, along that same line of questioning, where will these vehicles be stationed? I can see 4 places, but where's the 5th?
Well, from what I understand, there's going to be the Arizona Strip, Lake Havasu, Mojave Valley, Kingman, and there will be one, I'm not 100% sure where the sheriff would want to put it once it's put into use. But perhaps a secondary in case one goes down.
Okay.
As the armed forces say, one for repairs. Okay, thank you very much. We have one person that would like to speak to this item before we bring this to a conclusion. That's Michael Boone.
Good morning, Michael Boone, 2210 Palo Verde North, Lake Havasu City, Arizona. I think this is a good program that the sheriff is trying to utilize, getting his equipment from the military. I'm constantly making comments about getting things for free and when you can get them for free. The only question I have is when I read his backup detail, there's a lot of items missing. I think $2,500 a year maintenance is too conservative of a figure. Those tires alone to replace them are about $1,000 a piece. He doesn't address in any of the additional costs, all the upfitting for the vehicle, the lights, emergency equipment, the cost of the radios, any retrofitting of removing some of that military weaponry support equipment out of it. No fuel cost, estimated fuel cost. Are he's going to be able to pick these vehicles, or they're just going to deliver them? So we can determine what the maintenance records are on the vehicles, because I know they will provide you the maintenance records if you ask. And what kind of training are the mechanics going to get? These are specialized vehicles. You have to have some up-armor training on how to service that vehicle, and what kind of special equipment is the county going to have to buy to service those vehicles. Other than those concerns, I would have liked to seen in his proposal, but other than that, there's no doubt that these are valuable pieces of equipment, and he should, the board should approve it. I'm just concerned that every time he comes before this board, there's numerous things that are missing that are cost-related that he doesn't address. And I think that needs to change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boone.
Chairman Watson, I have a question in regards to Mr. Boone's comments.
We could have Officer Tropicani come up again.
These repairs and modifications, they would be paid for out of the sheriff's existing budget. Is that correct in my understanding?
That's the plan right now, yes.
Okay.
Currently, because these is in the backup, are only available for a very short period of time and then are not going to be available for the foreseeable future. We're just trying to get them right now. If we can get one running out of this year's budget, great. We'll start budgeting for, like he mentioned, the radios and any other support equipment in future budgets.
Okay, so they'll be brought online as budget allows and time.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. I'll make a motion that we acknowledge the sheriff's intent to obtain these 5 vehicles.
Second.
Motion and a second. Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
And Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And I believe that concludes our consent agenda. And we'll go back to the regular agenda. On to the official business to come before the board. Item number 1, discussion of pending legal and contemplated litigation claims and demands. Mr. Esplin?
Nothing to report to the board, thank you.
All right. Committee and legislative reports. Supervisor Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I attended the Quad State Local Governments Authority meeting. It looks like we'll be getting around 500 million for PILT. Our share, we need to go back a year to get an idea of what we will receive. SRS is funded for 18 but not 19, and we're still working on finding a permanent solution. The Landscape Conservation Cooperative and East Mojave Landscape Conservation Design Plot Project look to be going away and dismantled, but we've not seen anything in writing. The Joshua Tree proposal listing is under ESA. They've now split it into two species, the east and the west. The decision should be this fall for states reviews. RS 2477, HR 3270, and S 468 in relation to travel management planning and exclusions. We are waiting for a bill to attach it to. The current solicitor determined that the Migratory Bird Treaty Act does allow for incidental take, which is not the position of previous administrations. We sent a comment letter on proposed regulations for ESA. After review of the proposed regulations, we felt that the proposed regulations were in line with what is needed to amend the current regulations, provide some clarity, and incorporate recent litigation decisions. Our DC counsel stated that as a result, there may be more listings as endangered rather than threatened, and maybe a few more species will not be listed at all. The reason is that there will now be a clear distinction between the two categories. We pointed out that what the regulations will provide and said that they are good rules, but any rule will be litigated by the environmental community. Some members are worried about future habitat currently unoccupied being identified for tortoise protection under the proposed rule due to global warming. Council said that it's being addressed where DOI is working on a rule that would go against the proposal considered under the previous administration. This rule states that you have to exhaust occupied habitat before you can identify any unoccupied habitat. It also states that the unoccupied habitat at the time of listing has to have features for the species. Therefore, with climate change, the unoccupied habitat is out the window. The recent Western Regional Partnership webinar discussion on agency planning activities, the presentation included spokespersons from BLM, the Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife, and National Park Service. It was stated that all agencies are on the same page with involving the public in and the agencies in the planning process. There was a strong sentiment that the planning processes do require consultation with the counties so that the agency plans are consistent with the county's plans. And therefore, county plans need to address public land resources and issues that will allow them to be involved up front rather than after the plan has been drafted. Federal land may not be able to be specifically zoned. Local government can indicate its desires as to how land areas within its boundaries should be used or managed. Only by doing this by formal adoption of land use desires can BLM specifically be placed under an obligation to coordinate its plans with those of local government pursuant to FLPMA Section 202 requirements. Too often, BLM presents local governments with a draft plan and places county officials in the defensive rather than a proactive in advocating the wishes for allocating and directing future land uses. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Johnson. And I, too, sent a letter to support the endangered species changes. Supervisor Bishop?
Thank you, Chairman Watson. I attended the WACOG Regional Council on Aging in Parker, and then also attended the County Supervisors Association meeting in Phoenix. And then here locally, I joined Congressman Gozar for a view of the Veterans Building downtown Kingman with you. And then I also attended the Greyhawk Solar Ribbon Cutting. So they are in business and another great addition to our renewable energy in Mojave County.
Well, thank you.
That's all this month.
Very good. And thank you for attending the Greyhawk opening. Supervisor Angus. Supervisor Wakamoto.
I've been attending the DCP and the small group meetings in Phoenix for mitigation. What started out as Pinal County ag mitigation has now turned into mitigation, and what started out as tribal intentionally created surplus has now turned into intentionally created surplus, tribal and non-tribal. Mojave County, Lake Havasu, Bullhead City, Mojave Valley Irrigation District has the opportunity to hold a place on intentionally created surpluses in this mitigation situation. What's happened is that the drought contingency plan goal is to keep the water level above a called shortage. But as we work through this statewide, different people are asking for mitigation in terms of the water that they will lose. And as we focus on the goal of keeping the water above a called shortage, different people are having to see if they will give up their water supplies to make this happen. It's been a very interesting and taxing situation as we get closer to what we hope will be the end, because it's become very territorial in terms of what people want to keep. And once again, we have reminded the state that mitigation for some of these areas, such as the farmers in Pinal, is 150,000 acre-feet of water, which is half of what they use right now. However, the amount of water that we have on the Colorado River, not just from Page to Yuma, fourth priority, is only 164,000 acre-feet of water. So as we look at these numbers that are being considered, we realize that we have to be very careful and very protective of the water that we have.
Thank you, Supervisor Wakamoto. Just have a couple questions for you. The trigger for the shortage, we're talking about the Lake Mead facility.
Lake Mead will call, we are right now at 1079. The trigger is 1075. That's 4 feet. They believe that next year we will hit below 1075, but it will not be during the time when they're evaluating and calling for the trigger. But they still anticipate by the year 2020 that there will very likely be the shortage that is called. If we do not get this drought contingency plan in place, Arizona, being the most junior member of the lower basin states, will have to take the brunt of the initial cuts, which is fourth priority water. As I have spoken in the past about the small amount of fourth priority water that we have as Mojave County, it's probably 1/10 of the fourth priority water that Central Arizona Project gets. But with that in mind, the Central Arizona Project fourth priority water will take a big hit, probably 300,000 acre-feet of water, if we cannot get this drought contingency plan in place.
Thank you very much. And thank you for all the work, extra work that you do for Mojave County and Mojave County Water Authority. Thank you so much. On to the county manager's report. Mr. Hendricks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today I wish to clarify certain statements that I made at the September 17th, 2018 Board of Supervisors meeting regarding Mr. Boone's call to the public. Referencing an investigation into certain allegations against county administration, I stated the board did not commission that study. I did not commission that study. Ken Cunningham did not commission that study. That study was done for liability purposes by ASEP, which is our Arizona County Insurance Pool. While these facts are absolutely true, my original intent was to comply with ASAP recommendation to have an investigation. However, I mistakenly thought it was to be commissioned by the county, and I did ask Mr. Cunningham to contact a private investigator. Shortly thereafter, in a verbal conversation with the ASAP executive director, I was informed that since ASAP could be defending the county in any court action, the investigation needed to be by an independent investigator and therefore should not be commissioned by the county, and that the investigation should be commissioned by ASAP, to which I agreed. Lastly, regarding my regrettable ending comment and knee-jerk reaction, I truly believe governments of all levels should absolutely be questioned and held to a higher standard, and those that reasonably do so provide a very valuable service to our citizen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. Okay, there's no Board of Supervisors meeting minutes for approval today. So we will proceed now to the call of the public. Those wishing to address the board at the call of the public regarding matters not on the agenda must fill out and submit to the clerk a call of the public request to speak form. They're located at the back of the room prior to the meeting. Pursuant to the Arizona Revised Statutes, a public body may make an open call to the public during a public meeting, subject to reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions to allow individuals to address the public body on any issue within the jurisdiction of the body. At the conclusion of an open call to the public, individual members of the public body may respond to criticism made by those who have addressed the public body, may ask staff for review a matter, or ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. However, members of the public body shall not discuss or take legal action on matters raised during an open call to the public unless the matters are properly noticed and discussion and legal action. I have one person signed up for a call to the public, Mr. Boone.
Michael Boone, 2210 Palo Verde North, Lake Havasu, Arizona. I find it interesting that Mr. Hendricks seems to know what I'm going to do much before I do. But anyway, people aren't deranged, as you put it. They're tired of being given misinformation and giving delusional responses to people that know better. When I left here the other day, when you made your comment, I was provided an email dated February 7th, which I'm sure you've been made aware of, Mr. Hendricks. And you wrote that email to Tim Walsh, Ryan Espelin, Matt Smith, Escobrowski. And by the way, Escobrowski isn't an independent investigator. He's been working for the county and that governmental agency insurance for 15 years. So I don't know how independent that is. And also Ken Cunningham. And it says, alleging fraud and corruption is an extremely serious claim, one I don't take lightly. As such, I've directed Ken Cunningham, Human Resources, to commission an independent investigator, Keith Zabrowski of Investigative Research, Inc. in Phoenix, to fully and completely investigate the allegations. Well, if you did that, I don't see anywhere, unless you did an executive session, request the board to allow you to do that. If the determination is made in fact fraud or corruption or cover-up, the information be turned over to the board and or proper authorities for appropriate action. And this is your signature block on this email. I received this heavily redacted email shortly after the meeting. I went back, as I mentioned one time before, about the 2 felonies that are committed when you cherry pick records. I don't have this in any of the public records requests that I asked for. I have nothing with February 7th. So unless somebody conjured up this email, you're in violation of that. And at the last meeting, you got your own county ordinance that talks about misrepresenting things to the Board of Supervisors. I would think with somebody with your experience and the credentials that you claim to have would know better than to get up here and outright tell this board something that you knew there was an email to that would contradict that statement, and then try today to clean it up. I would think you'd be trying to do progressive, positive things, not spend your life with a broom and a dustpan trying to clean up things you, Mr. Walsh, and Ms. Ballard say. And I would hope Mr. Esplin would review what you say sometimes, because this was sent to him as well, and Matt Smith. And in closing, my email burns up daily from people that you and Mr. Walsh are emailing to, telling them things that are patently not correct. Unfortunately, some of these people live out of state, but they will be here for the next board meeting, and they will address you, Mr. Hendricks, with these emails that you sent that are contrary in nature. And I hope the board starts to take action and start reviewing what you do.
Okay, that concludes call to the public. And we shall proceed now under the regular agenda for the proclamation declaring October 2018 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Mojave County. I'll read it. Proclamation for the Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Whereas, according to the CDC National Intimate Partner in Sexual Violence Survey, 2015 data brief, about 1 in 4 women and 1 in 10 men experience sexual contact violence, physical violence, or stalking by an intimate partner, and reported to an intimate partner violence-related impact during their lifetime. And whereas behind these statistics are real people whose lives are affected and who are in need of our attention, our trust, and our support. Whereas domestic violence is a nationwide epidemic which affects our community, our families, our friends, and our neighbors. Whereas the impact of domestic violence is widespread, affecting the moral fabric of society as a whole. Now, therefore, we as Mojave County Board of Supervisors do hereby proclaim October 2018 as Domestic Awareness Month. And along with Mojave County Attorney Victim Witness Program, ask all citizens to participate in the Domestic Violence Awareness Month, schedule activities and programs during the month of October to show support for survivors of domestic violence and ending this cycle of abuse. In witness thereof, we have set our hands and caused to affix the Great Seal of Mojave County.
I make a motion that we approve.
We have a motion for approval.
Second.
And a second. Any further questions? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Next item on our agenda is a presentation and update from Next Era Energy Resources on the proposed wind farm in the White Hills Wind Project. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner Watson, or Chairman Watson and the Board of Supervisors. On behalf of Next Era Energy Resources, I'd like to thank you for the time you've provided us today to come and speak with you and provide an update regarding our wind project here in Mojave County. We're going to provide today's agenda is going to provide a company overview, history of the project, some background regarding the transactions that have occurred regarding the project over the past few years, project overview of where we are under the Next Era Energy Resources ownership and our plan of development, as well as the project timeline. From a company overview perspective, we want to make sure that you understand who Next Era Energy Resources is. Our management team often refers to us as the largest company no one's ever heard of. We are the largest generator of renewable energy in North America using the wind and sun. We are very competent and capable of owning and operating these assets going forward. We're not a fly-by-night operation. We are a partner that's going to be here in Mojave County from the time the project is built until the project is decommissioned. Our business model is to develop, build, and operate assets. It's not to develop, build, and sell. It's not to transact these assets. It's to own them for the betterment of our customers and our shareholders. We have two primary subsidiaries. One you may have heard about, Florida Power and Light Company. It is one of the largest utilities, public utilities in the United States with over 4.7 million customers. That's where we got our start back in 1925. Since then, we've emerged into being a provider of renewable energy outside of the state of Florida, as well as nuclear and natural gas power outside of those states, outside of the state of Florida as well. We have about an 18.9 gigawatt portfolio in operation, and we are operating in 30 states and 4 provinces in Canada, as well as a solar asset in Spain. We also have some other large subsidiaries in Texas, Jexa Energy and Lone Star, and we also have a large data analytics company called WindLogix that helps us understand the renewable resource in a much better format and help to utilize that resource in making good decisions about where we invest our power. On this slide, we're showing you where our assets are located across the country. As you can see, we have Florida as our primary utility base. We have several solar and natural gas plants and nuclear plants in the state of Florida, as well as a large natural gas pipeline bringing natural gas from Alabama into the state of Florida. We also have renewable assets, nuclear assets, and coal assets located outside the state of Florida. But our primary driver at NextEra Energy Resources is operating wind and solar sites, as well as electric energy storage. We have a large presence here in the state of Arizona, as well as some projects in New Mexico that are providing renewable energy to Arizonans. The wind resource in New Mexico is a very rich resource, and we have located assets in New Mexico that are transmitting that power into the state of Arizona for the benefit of APS, as well as a project that's under development called Borderlands near the Arizona-New Mexico border, and that's contracted with Tucson Electric. Perrin Ranch is our closest project here to Mojave County. It's located in Coconino County, just outside Flagstaff, and that's an operating wind site that's been there since 2011, 2012. We've recently deployed capital in Pinal County for one of the largest solar and storage projects in the state. That project's contracted with Salt River Project and has been successfully operating since April of this year. Since 2012, we've invested over $600 million here in the state of Arizona, and those dollars are now generating projects that are serving Arizonans. Going into the project history, this is a project that you've probably seen more than my face present to you in the past, and I want to make sure that we cover what's been done in recent past, as well as what's been done for the last 10 years now. So the quick timeline, and I'll run through it very quickly. Mojave County Wind Farm was proposed by BP Wind Energy. BP has recently divested of its renewable portfolio. We were one of the acquirers of that portfolio over the last several years. In 2009, the BLM issued a notice of intent to prepare an environmental impact statement, and they moved forward with the cooperating agencies in that process. In 2010, BLM issued an amended NOI to address significant changes to the project. That's when there were some fairly large design changes and development plan changes that happened there. In 2012, the Arizona Corporation Commission approved the Certificate of Environmental Compatibility. They issued that. It's been in place. It's actually up for renewal or extension later this year. We've already initiated the process of requesting extension of that CEC. And that's going to be, we believe it will be on the agenda for next week's ACC meeting. In 2012, we also had the Mojave County Energy Overlay Zone for wind was established for that site. In 2013, BLM issued the final EIS and record of decision. In 2016, the BLM issued the right-of-way grant to Mojave County Wind Farm, LLC. That's the entity that we acquired in 2017. In 2018, the development and marketing efforts continue and momentum is building. We believe that this project presents a very strategic opportunity for both Arizona companies as well as California companies to take advantage of good, strong wind resource with reliable transmission interconnection to both California and Arizona transmission grids, presenting an opportunity for this project to be very marketable as we're presented with recent law changes in California with Prop 100, where California will be 100% renewable energy by 2045. and ramping up their renewable portfolio standard significantly. Likewise, in Arizona, you all are probably very aware of Prop 127 that will be on the ballot in November that would increase the renewable portfolio standard here in Arizona. The reason I bring up those two propositions in two different states is because that drives the demand for this project. We believe that this project is strategically situated to take advantage of both of these bills. Say 127 passes here in Arizona, plus the proposition that did pass in California, present an opportunity to increase market demand for this asset where it's been waning over the last near decade as it's being developed. We believe that the market demand is going to be turning around very soon. The location of the project is along Highway 93, moving back towards the Hoover Dam area, back towards Nevada. Many of you are probably very aware of where it's been. And let's go through the transaction background. So originally this project was proposed and permitted by BP Wind under the project name of Mojave County Wind Farm, LLC. One interesting thing is as this developer pushed this project through, a lot of work was done in the name of BP Wind Energy, LLC, and not in the project entity's name. That's required us to do a lot of legwork and backtracking to make sure that the project is focused on presenting not only the BP Wind Energy name, but also the Mojave County Wind Farm LLC name. So there's been some work with us and the agencies associated with this, whether it be the county, the state, and so forth, to make sure that the permits, licenses, ordinances, everything's been done in the name of the legal entity that's going to own and operate this asset. The project LLC was sold to Orion Wind Resources LLC in 2015, and then in 2017, NextEra Energy Resources acquired that project. We refer to the project as White Hills Wind, but the legal entity name of the project is still Mojave County Wind LLC, Wind Farm LLC, excuse me. Go through the project overview. This project is located on 29,249 acres, all of which are 100% BLM land. We've changed the technology that was originally contemplated. When I say that, we've increased the size. One of the largest technological advancements in the wind energy business has been the size and height of wind turbines. We are going to be using a General Electric 2.52 megawatt machine. That is the configuration of that wind project is going to have a 353.38 megawatt size. The potential customers, as we discussed, are in California and Arizona utilities, as well as large commercial and industrial customers that may want to independently contract for renewable energy. We do have a signed large generator interconnection agreement with WAPA for that project. The project's located parallel to the WAPA line along that site, and we do have a point of interconnect along the Liberty to Meade 345 kV line. We are seeking transmission services for WAPA to give us firm transmission delivery over to Marketplace and McCullough, two other substations located on the California side that increase the marketability of the project. The competition of the project, as you're probably well aware, is the solar PV and New Mexico wind. New Mexico has a very strong resource. The benefit that this project offers is it's located where people can take the power now. In order for New Mexico wind to be a truly strong competitor, they need to be able to get the wind into the state or into California. Right now, they can't do that. That's what creates a strategic opportunity for this particular site. We're ahead of the competition because we're here and we have interconnection. We believe construction will take roughly 12 months to build once we have a notice to proceed from the BLM. We are estimating a commercial operation date in 2020. We do believe we're going to have construction jobs in the range of 200 to 400 at peak, and we're going to have operational jobs of up to 30 high quality, high paying jobs at this site. This map shows you a layout of the turbine locations that are presented as part of the project. You'll see also here with the land use or the land ownership that it is located on 100% BLM land, and we're limited to construction of this wind farm within those corridors that are highlighted. So this last schedule, the table presents you the timing and major milestones associated with the project. So we've completed the interconnection aspect earlier this year. The wind turbine supply contract would be executed, we believe, at the end of this year, barring any major marketing hiccups, and causing us to not have a customer in order to actually build the project for. We do anticipate the BLM notice to proceed in the first quarter of 2019. Construction contract would be executed with our EPC contractor at that time as well. And the commencement of construction could start as early as the second quarter of 2019, with testing in Q4, commercial operations starting sometime along Q3 of 2020. Decommissioning would be somewhere between 30 and 35 years from the commercial operation date. With that, that concludes our presentation. Are there any questions?
Questions?
Thank you very much for coming and giving us this status update.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes, you know, it's always been said in Mojave County, if we could just harness the wind, we'd all be rich. And it sounds like you're very close to harnessing the wind. And I appreciate you coming in and giving this presentation so we can have a better understanding of where you came from and where you've been and where you're going. And it sounds like this is very, very close. And with just doing the ribbon cutting that I mentioned earlier for Greyhawk Solar, I think this would be a fantastic addition to our renewable energy in Mojave County, whether Prop 127 passes or not.
I think you're right. I think the market demand would be even increased more than it already is. Prop 100 in California helped a lot because there's not a lot of room for new wind construction in California. With you being so close to the California ISO, the California transmission grid, this project would be able to sell power into California very easily, and that's what creates a lot of market demand that we're seeing right now. If Prop 127 does pass in November, we believe that that just increases the position that the project already has. It's already very marketable because of Prop 100. 127 is just icing on the cake.
And if Prop 127 fails...
we still have market demand from California.
Right. Arizona's still in the position to where we do want renewable energy.
Correct. Correct.
So I think what you're asking today is for us to consider, as the Board of Supervisors, to sign a letter of support so that you can go forward with...
If I can just interject, we're not going to take any action today. We haven't agendized for any action. What we've agendized is for a presentation, and that's it.
Right, but what I would like to do is ask this board to agendize this for the next meeting and consider signing a letter of support.
We would be very appreciative of that.
We would have to review whether we can do a letter of support in the future, but that's something that we can bring up on a future agenda if you wish to bring it, and we would review it to determine whether it'd be legal or not to do that.
Okay. Yes, I would like to see this put on the next agenda for discussion.
I would recommend instead, what I'd recommend is that if you wish to put it on the agenda, you can submit it through the normal channels. We can review it and go that route, is what I'd recommend.
Okay.
Any further comment?
I'm glad to see that we are moving toward alternative energy because it seems to be the wave of the future, and thanks for all your efforts.
Thank you.
It's been a long 10 years.
It has.
Putting this program together. I remember going out there the very first day, back in 2010, I guess it was, and wind was blowing quite a great deal that morning. And so there were a lot of comments by people from BLM and the Department of Interior and National Park Service, but I think it's a good fit. Congratulations on getting this far so fast, and good luck.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Bet. Okay, next up on our agenda is the presentation of the tax deed process by Cindy Landa Cox and her support group. Doesn't look like Cindy so far.
No, and I apologize. She's not able to be here today. So, good morning, Chairman Watson, Supervisors.
Good morning.
Today's presentation is in regards to the tax deed process, what we've done so far, and what we'd like to do in the future. So I'm going to introduce our analysts, Luke Mornian and Julia Dollarhide. They'll be giving the presentation today, and they'll be able to answer any questions you have. Okay.
Thank you.
Chairman Watson, members of the board, I'd just like to thank you on behalf of Treasurer Cox for giving us the opportunity to present this information to the board and to the public as well. To start, just what the information I'll be going over today, we'll give a quick recap and results of the FY 2018 deed project. Those are the approximately 800 parcels that the board approved for tax deed last spring. And then Ms. Dollarhide will give an update on the Laserfish automation project. We're actually in the process of automating some of the workflows associated with the tax deed process. And she will also give you an overview of the FY 2019 deed project proposal that was approved earlier in this meeting, as well as a cost-benefit analysis. This slide here is the timeline that we originally presented to the board last February. And today, we submitted a list of the 723 parcels that did complete the Treasurer's tax deed process. As Ms. Anderson mentioned earlier, we will be transferring a more detailed list with all the information, including the costs that were incurred along the way, to her later this month. You'll see that we did stick to the original timeline, and as you'll see in a moment, we completed the project significantly under budget. So as I mentioned before, there were 809 parcels approved for deeding. The funding was also approved. 2 different dates, 731 parcels in February and an additional 78 in April. And it was a total of $150,350 in funding. And that was transferred from the general fund contingency. So there's 2 phases to the Treasurer's tax deed. The phase 1 costs are third-party costs. So this is money that actually leaves the county. It's paid out to the title company, to the newspaper for publication costs, things like that. The first and probably most significant cost is a limited title search that the Treasurer's Office is required to perform. We focused our efforts on large quantities of parcels that were eligible for tax deed within the same subdivision, and this allowed us to reduce the fees associated. The board approved a contract amendment with Pioneer Title. They offered to give us a break on the price of running the title reports as long as it was common ownership within the same subdivision. So our original estimate was almost $60,000, but the actual cost that was incurred was less than $9,000, and that represents an 85% savings against the original estimate. The second significant cost for the phase 1 was certified mailing fees. Once we get back the title reports, we're required by statute to send a legal notice to all of the interested parties. We sent out close to 4,300 notices, and the redemption period for those interested parties ran from June 1st through August 31st of this year. We were able to realize some significant cost savings here as well by sorting and mailing the letters by the recipient, not by the parcel. So we did a lot of bulk mailings to parties that owned multiple parcels. And we were also able to utilize the Postal Service electronic signature for the return receipts, which was a very significant cost savings. So original estimate, $40,000, we spent just over $2,000. This is a 94% savings versus our original estimates. The last cost in phase 1 was newspaper publication. Again, we looked for ways we could save money on this. We went with a list style advertisement and instead of a traditional block format. The list style is the format that we use to advertise our tax lien sale every January. We also ordered the parcels by the length of the property description, and this enabled us to save about 91% against the original estimate of $28,000. The second grouping of costs are the phase 2 costs, and these are what we refer to as soft costs because the money does not actually leave the county coffers. These are costs incurred by the treasurer's office and also by the recorder's office. For the treasurer's office, these costs are notary and deed issuance costs, and these costs, basically the cost of the time and labor for the treasurer's office staff and performing the tasks, they are added on to the individual taxpayer accounts as a fee, and those fees will be recouped eventually at the deed sale. Our original budget was $42,000, and the actual cost was about $37.5. This is about 11% savings. On the recorder's side of things, once the treasurer's office issues the tax deeds, the recorder has to record the deeds. We did not initially budget for this. The actual cost wound up being just under $11,000. And this, again, is a soft cost. It's basically an interdepartmental transfer between the treasurer's office to the recorder's office, but the money never leaves the county. So the final disposition of the 809 parcels that were approved last spring, 723 parcels were deeded. Those phase one third-party deed costs, after recovering some of the fees via redemptions by property owners or interested parties, net out to about $11,000. As I mentioned before, the recording costs that were in a departmental fund transfer to the recorder's office, just under $11,000. So net total deed cost for 723 parcels to be deeded was just over $22,000. And I would mention that of the $150,000 that was initially approved for funding and transferred from the contingency fund, we only spent about 8%. So it was a group effort, and we found a lot of ways to save the county money on this one. Throughout the process, we had 5 parcels that were removed as a result of the title reports we received from Pioneer Title. Those were either because of IRS federal tax liens or other clouded title type issues. We removed those parcels because pursuing a tax deed against a parcel with a federal tax lien or other title issues opens up the door for potential litigation further down the road. So we wanted to avoid that at all costs. We ended up having 81 parcels that were redeemed, and I mentioned this earlier. We collected about $60,000 in fees and interests, about $25,000 in delinquent taxes, and recouped about $2,000 of the costs that we incurred along the way. So if looking at the big picture, the net total deed cost, $22,000. The total that was credited to the county general fund was just under $60,000, and that's redemption fees that were collected as well as delinquent fees and interest on back taxes, leaving us with basically a net profit of about $37,000 to the county and an additional $25,000 in long overdue taxes that were distributed to various districts within Mojave County. Here's just a quick graphic to show the original $150,000 that was approved by the board was budgeted to be expended, some in FY 2018 and some in FY 2019, just because of the timeline of the project. So of the money that was budgeted for FY 2018, we spent about $11,500. The money that was budgeted for FY 2019, we spent about $11,000 as well. So I would like to give a big thank you to Mojave County Assessor Jeannie Kinch and her staff for helping with pulling data on valuations and things like that. Also to Mojave County Recorder Christy Blair and her staff. They really went above and beyond in getting over 700 deeds recorded in order for us to meet our project timeline. And we did have a small grouping of parcels that required physical posting of notices on the property. So thank you to County Sheriff Doug Schuster and Deputy Todd Aaron for accompanying our staff for those postings. And then, of course, a big thank you to Treasurer Cox for her overwhelming support and encouragement of this project, and to multiple members of the Treasury staff who aided in our efforts. And now I'd like to turn it over to Julia Dollarhide, our management analyst within our office, and she'll recap you on our automation project as well as the next grouping of parcels.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As Luke mentioned, we do have an ongoing automation project in the works right now, which we are about 40% of the way through this project. When we had the original meetings in the spring, we talked about the enormous backlog of parcels that we have and how much capacity the Treasurer's Office actually has to do these types of activities. And it became very apparent to us that we needed to put automation in place to help not only clear up the backlog, but then stay current with the number of parcels that each year will progress through this process. And so we have worked with a vendor, which we have done some other automation projects with. They helped us with our tax lien foreclosure process with investors of tax liens. And we have greatly improved our capacity and our efficiency and our accuracy through this process. When we handed them the list of what we needed to deed and they ran it through the system, it only took 15 minutes to create 723 deeds. The amount of staff time that would have taken us to physically type and create those by hand and then have people proofreading and double checking would have just been enormous for us to handle. So this project is really moving forward. We're very excited about the other pieces that they are bringing to us in terms of being able to crank out that advertising list the way that we would like to see it, make those notices actually print in the correct order so we don't then have to shuffle through them and put them in order by recipient, and really make this a much easier flowing process. And one other piece that we're bringing in is the tracking of the redemptions. That is a very important piece. When the parcel owners do come in and redeem the parcels, the system automatically is pulling data out of our treasurer base and knowing every single parcel that redeems every single day. And it will pull those from the list to be deeded so that we can stay on top of that. Because when you're talking about hundreds to multiple thousands of parcels, it is a big job to track all of that data. So in fiscal year 19, we're coming to you now. And you're thinking, okay, we just approved a gigantic list for you in February and April. Well, we are coming to you now because we realized several lessons from this first go around. One of which is that our activities stretched 2 fiscal years. That creates a lot of issues internally with budgeting. And then it also creates a lot of issues in terms of the timing of when the deed happens, when the assessor has a cutoff for the new tax roll and the information that goes into that roll, how long it takes the other departments, the recorder and the assessor, to catch up with all the information that we are now changing. And we decided that we really need to get a head start on this. So we have determined that if we start now, we are looking to have title reports between now and January, that we would create notices and have them printed and mailed for February 1st, so that we would begin the cure period listed in the statutes of a minimum of 90 days, that we would end that the first week of May, and as of the second week of May, would be able to start producing deeds for parcels that did not redeem, and we could complete that and fund that to that soft charge, as Luke explained, over to the interdepartmental transfer to the recorder's office, still within fiscal year 19, and have all costs for this project wrapped up the same year. We would have our list to you all, the board, well before the November timeframe, and potentially you could hold a board sale. Ms. Anderson could do that at any point in time after that process is complete, so you would have the entirety of the fiscal year 2020 to make that happen. As Luke said, our greatest savings is recognized when we look at parcels that are within a subdivision and where we have owners who hold multiple parcels. Now, understand that we had not done this practice in over 10 years. And we took 809 this last go around, and as I said, we learned a lot of lessons. However, we went back and reanalyzed the data and said, okay, where do we really have large quantities under very similar ownership and in subdivisions that we can tackle this and really get a handle on the backlog. That's why the list in the board packet included 5,471 parcels. We would not have been able to do this without the automation that we are putting in place, so this is greatly helping us. These parcels are located in 19 different subdivisions across the county. There are 58 distinct ownerships within those 5,471 parcels. So this is nobody that's a onesie, twosie owner of anything here or there. This is folks that have large quantities, and they are very much delinquent for, unfortunately, a long time now. This grouping represents 33% of that original delinquency we brought to you back in February, well, January and February, when we first started talking about doing the process. It's a very large percentage. If you couple that with the ones that we just did, we will have tackled 43% of that entire backlog. That was almost 14,800 parcels we originally brought before you. So we're taking this very seriously, that we need to do something to get these parcels back in the active tax roll and everyone participating in the revenues of the county. So the graph on the left that says 2019 recommendations, this is our 5,471. There are 11 owners owning 3,087 of these parcels. The other owners, I said there were 58 distinct ones, have the other 2,384. So you can see where we have folks that a long time ago came into the county, bought up huge swaths of parcels, and unfortunately over time stopped paying. And this is what we're looking to take in this sale, in this process. Please note that none of the parcels included in this particular selection are primary residences for anyone. This is vacant land. What we have remaining from that original group we brought you in the spring, after we take this 5,400 parcels, the remaining parcels still have almost 1,600 that still have large amounts of ownership, anywhere between 21 and 100 plus parcels per owner, makes up that 1,581. That still will bring us significant cost savings as we approach those in future fiscal years. However, please note that 5,393 parcels, those are owners that have less than 20 each. In fact, a whole huge number of them are 1 and 2 parcels they own individually. And at that point in time, we may run into this is someone's actual residence where they're living. And we will be inspecting those parcels very carefully when we get to that point. But we're trying to do the biggest, largest cleanup effort that spends the least amount of money and gets the most benefit to the county as quickly as we can accommodate this. And one of the reasons being that soft charge, even though it stays in the county, the interdepartmental transfer between this fund that you granted us to do the work and over to the recorder, that $15 fee to record doubles next July 1st. So we have a real urgent need to get this through the process as quickly as possible and hit as many parcels as we can while we still have a reduced cost basis for it. So here's our estimated costs. In terms of the hard charges that go out the door for the newspaper, for mailing, for the limited title reports, we're estimating $45,140 for these parcels, and that is due to those ownerships. We have one particular ownership where it's over 700 parcels, just in one ownership. So the reduced mailing cost alone is just significant there. Our phase 2 cost, this $82,000, is that interdepartmental transfer that would go to the recorder's office at the $15 per recording still for the parcels. Now, the phase 2 costs can go down. If people redeem, then this is budgeting all 5,471. People that redeem lessen the amount of parcels that we're actually going to deed, so that cost, that is the max you're going to see. It has the potential to decrease. So our total fiscal year 2019 estimate is just over $127,000. We still have project funds that were transferred in. Luke talked about $100,000 in fiscal year 18, $50,000 in fiscal year 19. We have $41,000 of those dollars remaining. So really what we're asking for is a difference of $86,000. And just to make sure that we don't have any unforeseen issues on the title reports where we have a lot more mailings than what we're anticipating, we rounded up. It's plus 4%, I'll call it fudge factor in case of incidentals, to $90,000 is the total request. Luke spoke about the cost-benefit analysis a little bit earlier. We went back to take a look at how much we spent this most recent go-around for the June delinquent tax notice that we just mailed. We went back and looked at September of last year at the tax statement that we issued, and we looked at the notice that we sent in December and January on the lien sale, and then the advertisement that took place in February for the tax lien sale. And this does not include any employees' time. This is physical hard costs out the door that we spend on average $2.77 a parcel. You think, oh, $2.77, that's not a whole lot of money. Yeah, it is. On the 723 deeded parcels, that's about $2,000 a year. On the parcel list we're putting before you that you have approved, thank you very much, is $15,000 a year. So this is where Luke was talking about we could save annually if none of these parcels go anywhere. $17,000 a year right now that the Treasurer's Office spends year after year after year. And as we have tracked the costs, they keep increasing each year. So this isn't getting any cheaper to have all the delinquency out there. And each of these parcels has been delinquent with a county-held lien at least 5 years. So we have already spent over $85,000 on parcels for which we receive zero tax revenue to the county. So when we look at the third-party expense that we're asking, the $45,000 that will leave the county, and we look at the redemptions that we received in fiscal year 18, and we take out the soft charge from the recorder. So we're taking that almost 60 grand and the third-party costs that we incurred minus what we got back in costs from redemptions, there's a net $48,000 sitting there. If we do nothing else, we've already paid for the expense on these new ones. As long as we stay within the budget request that we've asked for. In fact, we will leave $3,100 on the table, and that's before any parcel sells at a deed sale. When we look at the redemptions that we did receive for fiscal year 18, 2.2% of the balances owing were received. We had 10% redemption in terms of volume. So these were not even parcels that had the most owing. Only 2.2% of the revenues came in. In fiscal year 19, if we take a look at similar, anywhere from 0.5% up to 2%, we could be looking at anywhere between $71,000 to $282,000 coming in redemptions. Now, some of the folks in this list, some of the parcel owners in this 5,471 parcel list were already hit in the first go-around. We anticipate that some of them, because of their large holdings, will redeem more parcels in this list again. So we do not believe that we will walk away with zero redemptions. We firmly believe we will see more redemptions. Once the deed sale is commenced and we're looking at how much money we can bring back on the books, the parcels that we just did, the 723 deeds, represents roughly $70,000 a year in tax revenue. And that is based upon the 2018 tax bill that we just generated. The list that we're asking that you have approved would be another $185,000. So once sold, these are adding roughly $250,000 to the revenue base each year. And that's not even half of the delinquency. If we pull it all back in, we're talking about over $500,000 in revenues each year. And that completes the presentation. Any questions?
Questions for Ms. Dollarhide?
Well, I want to thank the Treasurer's Department for your obvious hard work. There's a lot of work to put in, and I want to also thank you very much for taking the effort to try to save the money as much as possible. And I hear your automation system is awesome. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, one of the pieces that we looked at as we approached the project was if this was our money and we had to spend it, what would we do to save money? And that's how we approached it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Johnson, yes.
Thank you. If we could, in coming up, if these presentations give us no backup or anything, and obviously this presentation was for item number 45, these need to be agendized instead of presentations where somebody reads to us, where this could be submitted to us, and we'd have a chance to digest it and have, good questions. Some of mine, which I don't need answers for, but just come to mind, is when we talk about how much money we make, I'm not sure that we're breaking even. It's still a good idea to get them off the tax roll because we're only, 20% of the taxes collected, and I'm not sure if the money collected by us covered our costs, but we still got them back on the tax rolls. It's good. But I'd rather see these things put on as an agenda item so that we can actually discuss them and have information so we can review it and make some good qualified questions come out of it. But that's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor Johnson. I'm sure that the treasurer will get in contact with you and satisfy any requests that you might have on the next presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Outstanding. Okay, now I believe we're on to our regular agenda. Item number 51, discussion, possible action, acknowledge and refer the Public Works a petition filed pursuant to Mojave County Ordinance 2016-09 to consider including in the Mojave County Tertiary Road Maintenance System, subject to meeting all applicable requirements and subsequent board approval, an approximately 0.3-mile section of South Bouse Road from West Ship Drive to State Route 68, located in the Golden Valley area. We have Mr. Lotowski available for questions. I believe this is in District 4? Supervisor Bishop?
I don't have any questions of Mr. Lukowski, and I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further questions? Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
No.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
And Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
On to item 52, discussion, possible action, approve the adoption of Board Resolution 2018-123, accepting the boat road maintenance petition request that Ron Lane from Douglas Lane to Lawton Road, a distance of 0.5 miles, be accepted into the Mojave County Road Maintenance Program for tertiary maintenance in the Yucca area of Mojave County. I believe that might be Supervisor Wakamoto. Would that be correct?
It is, and I don't have a problem with this. I move that we accept this. Adopt BOS Resolution 2018-123, accepting the road maintenance.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Questions? There being no further questions, Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
No.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. On to item number 53, discussion, possible action, establishing a Mojave County Commission for Public Lands and Recreation, having the responsible charge for making recommendations to the Board of Supervisors on the matters public recreation and related activities on public lands outside of the county roads right-of-ways. This is in response to our ongoing process with the BLM and travel management plan. Mr. Letowski, do you have something you'd like to present to the board on some of your thoughts and ideas?
Good morning, Chairman Watson, members of the board. Staff, at the board's request at the last meeting, did agendize this particular item as it relates to the future as well as the past ongoing collaboration with county administration as well as the public in advancing as a cooperative entity comment on, at least in the present, the transportation management plan being advanced by the Bureau of Land Management Kingman District Office. I believe the board had a very productive conversation in regard to potential process procedure by which the county can be more actively engaged in the review, comment, and particularly guidance recommendations to the Board of Supervisors on the use of open space and public lands for recreation, as well as well, recreation would be, of course, non-motorized as well as motorized OHV type of use. So, as staff understood it from the last meeting, we re-agendized the item to consider a commission tentatively titled for public lands and recreation for board direction in the context of possibly proceeding toward establishing such commission with staff bringing back for board consideration bylaws and central to the purpose and composition of the commission.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Letowski? Supervisor, I guess?
Well, first of all, thank you for bringing it back so quickly. I almost kind of missed it in the 53. And this is happening because of all the public input that came to us when the TMP was put out, and because of that public input, we were able to go to our local BLM, and our state caught wind of it too. I don't know if the other supervisors, but I got a call from Ray Suazo, the Arizona director, and he wanted to know more of what was going on up here. He said to me that they have no intention of closing. He doesn't know where that came from, and I received the BLM's mission statement from Rick Swats, and it doesn't say anything about closing. It sort of backs up what Mr. Suazo told me, and so we were happy to hear that. So I think that going ahead and implementing a commission, and with whatever we call it, public lands, and having representatives from each district, because honestly, they're the ones who are on the ground, literally. They hear things first, they see things first, and they could come and as these things happen, as they hear about it, and we could make decisions. It'd be a totally advisory board, I assume. So, I have my ideas. I'd like to hear, I'm sure the other board members do. So I don't know, is this like for the mechanics of it, how we would put it together? So like what's the purpose of this motion?
Mr. Andrew?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Angus, it depends on how fast the board would like to move forward with this. If we're wanting to move forward very quickly, and I believe the board does, if you decide to approve this, it would be to authorize staff to develop bylaws very quickly. We can model our bylaws off of either the Parks Commission, old Parks Commission bylaws, or Transportation Commission bylaws. Give the staff a sense of how you would like this committee made up, like 2 members from each district, and then have 1 supervisor to head the committee. Once that's done and we can bring that back in front of the board, at the same time, we could ask each board member who they would prefer to nominate, and that information could actually be included in the packet. So this could all, I can see that it can conceivably be done in one meeting very quickly, if that's what the board chooses.
Yeah.
I believe we should act promptly on this. We only have 60 days.
Yeah, since we've spoken about this and it was in the newspaper, I've been approached by several members of my community who want to be on this. They're very excited, and I think it's just the time is right, and it's a great idea. You know, we got to keep it so it's not too big, not too small. Of course, probably someone from Public Works should be on it as well. But yeah, I'm ready to go. We're ready to go. I think the members of the public are ready to go.
I think there's a number of people in the public, in the audience this morning, that would probably be here to volunteer. So with that,
Chairman Watson, I've already had 2 people ask to volunteer to be on this committee should we decide to go forward with this, and that certainly does have my support. I think we need to maybe limit the time these members are on the committee so that we can have more people participate, and maybe limit the time to just a one-year period.
certainly put that in consideration, but I think the direction we're looking for this morning is to establish it. And the parameters of the bylaws would probably include that length of service.
And that would come later. When they produce the bylaws, they would bring it back to the board, and the board would then accept it.
Then make those recommendations,
yeah.
Right. So at this point, we'd be looking at making a motion for establishing the board and then listening to the public on their input.
I'll put that in the form of a motion.
We have a motion for the establishment of Mojave County Commission for Public Lands and Recreation.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask for further clarification by the board? If I could suggest, it would be to direct staff to very quickly create the bylaws and a committee that would be one supervisor, 2 members from each district, and 1 person from Public Works. And then contact the supervisors to obtain names of people that they are recommending from each district to be included in that, and then bring back a complete package as soon as possible. And I'd ask Steve, if I may, Mr. Chairman, how soon he could bring that back before the board.
County Manager Hendricks and board, I believe we could probably pull something together. Be probably pressing for October 15th, but perhaps the first meeting in November.
Yes. That would be entirely reasonable, I would believe.
And then we'll only have really about 30 days for input, or less than that, to make an impact. But it's certainly doable, and I think it's necessary. Supervisor Angus?
Along with that, can there be some kind of mission statement so we have some sort of clear direction as to what this, because it's a huge, I mean, that if it can go out of control, I think we should have some clear direction on the things that we have some control over here as in the county.
And Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Angus, that would be a part of the bylaws. I believe in the Transportation Commission bylaws, it clearly states what their responsibilities are and what they're charged with, so that would be very appropriate. And
so I think also, because it started with the people, that if you guys have any ideas that you think that we should keep in mind when we're doing this, if you can contact your supervisor of your district, and then we'll forward it over to make sure that it's included or thought about. That wasn't to you, that was to them. I was looking at you, but I was actually talking. So I know that I've already gotten a lot of things I think that we wouldn't have even thought about. So what I'm saying is, if you guys have ideas, send them to your supervisor, and we'll make sure it gets over to be included.
So Chairman Watson, I will amend my motion to include asking staff to develop a set of bylaws and a mission statement and incorporate all those things that County Manager Hendricks mentioned, and bring it back at the next meeting or as soon as possible. Which, if you can't do it by the next meeting, the following.
And that's excellent. That's perfect. I believe that by creating the bylaws, we would have to get that information, I believe, by Thursday, and that'd be a tough task. So by the following meeting, the one that Steve mentioned, I think that would be doable. And
all right, we have a motion.
I'll second.
And second?
Second that, and like I said, and the reason I brought that up is because I know we have a lot of people who probably want to say a lot. So I think the proper way would be to come through the supervisors.
Thank you, Mr. Latowski. We have a number of people signed up to speak to this item. You may wish to go ahead and speak. I'll call your name, but if you're pleased with the action that we're taking this morning, we would appreciate your brevity. Chuck Brinkley? Thank you. Robert Smith?
I'm also very pleased with your action on this and all your hard work that I will pass on to.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. John Strong?
Can I have a couple minutes of thought?
Certainly.
John Strong, 801 Thunderbolt Avenue, Lake Havasu City, Arizona. I'm past president of the Havasu Four-Wheelers. Also, I'm on the Arizona Peace Trail Board. We've worked with the Mojave County, La Paz County, and Yuma County over the past few years. We're nearing completion. In listening about this, what is going to happen, I just hope that we're not spending money for another step of bureaucracy, because we have worked very well with the city, county, state, and federal levels in creating the Arizona Peace Trail, and also with the Havasu Four-Wheelers. On our website, we have 108 runs that are trails, and 60 of them are in the Kingman area. And we've had a very good working relationship with the BLM. It takes a lot of time, a lot of work. So if you're creating another step of bureaucracy, there's a lot of time and a lot of work that takes to do what we've been doing. And it's like when I got back in town Thursday, set up a meeting for La Paz County, which was supposed to be done later on today, about another issue in their county, and then also got called about this here today, so we're here. And the thing is, it takes time to solve problems, and I know your time is very precious and limited, but it also takes a lot of time to solve problems, and I'm hoping that when you do this process, that you do it friendly to the public and where it works. Thank you.
Mr. Strong, do you have a suggestion for us this morning that would cure all the problems that we're facing?
Well, I'm one for working with bureaucracy, being a retired coach, teacher, and a chief negotiator back in Wisconsin for 31 years, in working with bureaucracy. The thing is, working with parents and athletes and students, I got paid to play, and now I'm out here. I'm not paid anything, and I'm playing and having a lot of fun. Also a site steward, and there's a lot of government organizations that work very well. I just hope that you're not making a roadblock, because when we go to the BLM, we get almost 100% of all of our trails open. And I hear people that don't get their trails open, and we ask them, well, did you submit them electronically? Well, no, you go 2.5 miles back on this wash, and then you turn right at the big rock, and then you go a half mile on this wash, and then turn. Well, anyway, making a long story short, they need to educate themselves how to talk to the BLM. And what I'm trying to tell you as a past teacher of technology, that I don't want to teach you widgets up here, because you already know that. And I'm out of the business for over 12 years, but it looks to me like you're creating another roadblock, and hopefully, because it doesn't become that.
Chairman Watson.
Supervisor Bishop.
It is my understanding that this committee will be giving the people a voice through the Board of Supervisors, who already have a standing as a cooperating agency. So the professional voice would still be there. We would just know how the people that use these trails feel. That's my understanding. I could be wrong, but that's the way I understand what this committee will be formed for and how it'll work.
Well, hopefully it's a problem-solving committee and not a problem in trying to solve the problems.
Mr. Strong, we strive very diligently to try to do that with every organization that we're involved in. With BLM especially, we have a great working relationship, and I can tell you from experience, after getting a categorical exclusion from BLM on 4.5 miles of road in the northern part of the state, we got that within 90 days. If you look up the history of categorical exclusions, you'll see that 90 days is probably a record for the state of Arizona, probably the United States. So we're going to work on that relationship with BLM and work on this relationship with this newly found board. And that's our intent.
And I'm coming also from a very positive working relationship with the BLM and also with the state, and just hoping that the county's not creating another roadblock. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Temesfield?
I'm representing two groups, Wallapai Four-Wheelers, which I became a member last year, and the group I came from out of California, Greater Southwestern Exploration Company. And we do four-wheeling and camping and RVing in these mountains around here in the Wallapais. And we've seen it in California where the BLM turns around and says they're going to help four-wheelers and help people with RVing, and they turn around and close the areas. Here, we express more time to have our thoughts and find out that, we go through the supervisors here and the chairman and get extensions, but extensions keep on going, and then the BLM says, okay, you've got so many days, and the county asks for more days, and the BLM says, no, that's it. Well, you keep on putting off and putting off, pretty soon it's going to be a dead subject. I just like to see it happen a lot sooner. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. I believe we're trying to act as promptly as possible. Mr. Bowen, Jim Bowen.
Jim Bowen, Havasu Four-Wheelers, live in Lake Havasu. Havasu Four-Wheelers, Havasu side-by-side organization, and also a board member on the Arizona Peace Trail. I think, Supervisor Bishop, that you've hit the nail on the head when you said the mission of it. And that is that I think the thing that, as working with the Arizona Peace Trail, there are 16 clubs. There's an impact of $1.2 billion, that's with a B, $1.2 billion of impact in Mojave and, the three counties that we're talking about right here, Mojave, La Paz, and Yuma. Now, the challenge that we bump into then is that all the land that we want to go on is BLM. BLM manages it. And so what we've got to do is we've got to figure out how the BLM goes through the process of either keeping a road open or closing a road. And the first thing we did in our club is we dedicated a group of individuals, and I've been in what we call the play committee. This is the Public Lands Access. And for the last 15 years, one of my primary goals has been to work with the BLM. Not to expect them to come to our meetings or something like this, but to specifically sit down with them several times a year and go over this. One of the first things we discovered is when they keep a road open or closed, they have an inventory, and then they sit down in a room with 7 or 8 individuals. There's one individual that is our advocate, and that is usually the recreation planner. There are 7 or 8 other individuals that are not necessarily our advocates. And these are what I call the ologists. There's the bugologist, the boneologist, the bushologist, and all these kind of guys. Now, their normal default is close it. Well, the thing that we discovered in Havasu is that with the recreation planner, what we simply did was we gave them a notebook about that thick of all the trails that we wanted open. Now, they have them in little sections that are hard to figure out, but we had them all tied together in a nice trail. We told them which one we wanted open, why we wanted it open, what was the different experience, and so forth. And we gave this to the recreation planner so that when he sat down or she sat down in the meeting, they had some ammunition to talk to these different people, the different ologists, all right? The thing we discovered was that by arming them like this, we got 98% of everything we wanted was open. My challenge here in the situation that we're in right now is that I'm not sure that we really have given these people the ammunition or the reasons why this should be open or closed. What does that mean? Shut up?
You're getting pretty close.
Please be quiet. All right. Okay. The thing I would like to say is you're going to see that we have a great relation with them. Some people do not have a good relationship
Well, I
with
heartily
them.
recommend that you volunteer for this commission.
And so I think that what you're suggesting is a good idea. We need to get people talking back and forth. Okay? So good luck.
Thank you very much, sir. Rick Swatz?
Thank you, Supervisor Watson, the board. My name is Rick Swatz. I live at 2900 Mechanical Street in Golden Valley. I'm really impressed by the action of the board. I'm so pleased, and I wanted to say thank you to every one of you. It's not often that the public brings a subject in front of the board and we see such positive, rapid reaction. And for those of us who are involved in use of public lands, this is really a big thing for us. As far as the commission goes, I view this as an advisory group, somebody to send the views of the people who are using things out, both to the board and then back to the various agencies. We have a lot of agencies to talk about when we're talking about government agencies in this county. We've got county government, but we got city governments, tribal governments, we have BLM, national parks, national recreation area, we got a national monument. We have a lot of agencies to talk to, and we need to develop relationships with all of them. And the board can't do that. You guys have things to do, you're busy. We can. The people who are the user groups, you know, I can't speak for every user group out there. I fly fish, I take pictures, I do a lot of things, but I can't speak for every user group. But I appreciate you painting with a broad brush and looking at the fact that there are many, many issues with many, many user groups, and creating a commission in the county that these user groups can come to and discuss their problems, and that group can go ahead and come up with an idea that will work for everyone. That's a very positive step forward in this county. It's something that we can use in planning for the future, and it's something that we can use to benefit us all in economically and mentally. Those days out in the wilderness are really good for your mental health. I did want to point out real quickly that we need to make this very available to the public. We can't have anybody who's a user group or a member of a user group out there who feels like they can't come to us and say, hey, look, you guys on the commission, you know, whoever you are, we want to be able to discuss our particular problem, whether you're a fly fisherman or whether you're a photographer. They need to be able to come to us, and we need to be able to look at those things. And then we need to be able to make it more concise and bring it to you in a capsule format so that you can look at it and go, hey, these are the arguments. This is what the group says, and maybe we should think about going that way, rather than spending your time doing as much work as you are on a particular issue like this BLM issue. And this is the issue that brought it to the forefront. And I think we do need to act very quickly to go ahead and make some inroads on this. The state does.
Thank you, Mr. Watt. Darrell Cosman? Thank you very much, sir. Doug Wisdom. Morning, sir.
Hi, Doug Wisdom, 10175 North Ambush in Kingman, up in Valley Vista. Chairman Watson and board members, I want to commend what you have done so far. I'm amazed at the speed at which you guys are operating. I've never seen this before in a government situation. But I would like to address something that you brought up, Supervisor Andrews, regarding your conversation with the Arizona BLM director, that he seemed to be somewhat unaware of all this closure going on in Kingman. Is that correct?
I don't want to say he was unaware. He just wanted to tell me personally that that wasn't the intent of the travel plan, is not to close. He wanted me to know that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I hold something that you were all given a copy of. This came out to my attention on the 21st of September. It is the BLM Arizona Motorized Recreation Action Plan. I think we could all get behind this. What we got here is a travel management plan that doesn't look anything like this. My concern would be, can we get BLM, the local BLM, on board with this and jettison this? That's my concern. And whatever we do in terms of a commission, I would hope that we can start back in square one. This plan from the state, it was put out in 2015. And our reaction now is close 30%. Nothing in this says about closing any kind of, some minor stuff, but nothing in this is about 30% closure, which the impact that would be. I thank you for your time. I encourage you with what you're doing with the commission, and hope to see something move quickly, and I'm sure you will. Thank you.
Certainly hope that you volunteer for this board.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Those are all the people that were signed up to speak to the item. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, we'll now move on to item number 54, the discussion and possible action. Approve the recommendation of the county manager to appoint Denise Burley as Mojave County Public Health Director at Range 29, Step 6, or $102,440 annually, and authorize up to 1 month's salary for moving expenses. Mr. Hendricks, do you want to further expound on this, or?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Patty Mead will begin her retirement tomorrow. And I want to say from the bottom of my heart, Mojave County owes a great deal of gratitude to Miss Mead. And, she's been a dedicated public servant. She's been a leader in the health communities. And I can't say enough about Patty, but I'm asking the board at this time to approve my recommendation to appoint Denise Burley as Mojave County Public Works Director at Mojave County Public Health Director at Range 29, Step 6, or $102,440 annually, and authorize up to 1 month's salary for moving expenses. And Denise is with us today. She came down from Coconino. If y'all would like to meet her or ask her any questions, but she comes to us from Coconino Public Health Services District, where she worked there for 26 years. In the public health field, she held recently positions of program coordinator, program manager, and division manager. She has a master's degree in public administration from NAU, and she got her bachelor's degree from the California State University in kinesiology. and physical education with an emphasis on exercise and nutrition. And she's very enthusiastic. We had an interview panel of my directors, and she was very impressive. And I hope, you know, she enjoys Mojave County and she enjoys our organization. I asked the board to approve my recommendation. And if you'd like, I could ask her to come down so you can at least meet her and recognize her and ask her to say a couple words. I don't want to put her on the spot, but...
This is not to embarrass you, Ms. Burley.
And I also wanted to mention...
Simply just put the spotlight on you, not to embarrass you.
I also wanted to mention while she's coming down that her first day will be October 22nd. And during the interim, I've got an incredibly talented individual that I've asked to be the acting director during the time until we can get the permanent director on board, and that's Jeannie Bowen. And I wanted to thank her personally very much for accepting the responsibility there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jean.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Chairman Watson, members of the board, thank
morning.
you. Is there anything I can answer for you?
Actually, hello, Denise.
Hello.
I'd just like to hear you speak a little bit and tell us some about you and your background, and to let you know that you come highly recommended by a very good friend of mine that lives in Coconino County. So,
okay,
I trust
I'll be interested to hear about that.
I will let you know his name
certainly
later. But
so I've spent 26 years as county manager. Hendricks mentioned, with Coconino County, and started out as a program coordinator and made kind of a leap from private sector to public sector. Very much kind of that leap of faith. I was full-time, full benefits, and just saw an opportunity really to serve the public, and realized kind of at that point I'm not a very profit-driven person. And came on and worked with a program that promoted physical activity and nutrition education. Stayed with that theme really for about 15 years, and then decided I wanted to work more into administration, and asked my supervisor about what skills I needed to build. He gave me a list, of course, which was great, and worked on those for a number of years, and then became a division manager after that. Since that point, I've overseen a number of different programs, many of which are programs that you provide as well. Examples are, of course, nutrition, physical activity. I oversee the tobacco and chronic disease programs, Smoke-Free Arizona. I've worked over immunizations and clinical operations, HIV case management. So I know their budgets. I sort of know their funding streams, where their monies come from, some of the challenges they face. So I'm looking forward to those opportunities to learn more about your challenges and staff's challenges here, and some of the strengths. I know you've got a lot of strengths, a lot of programs that you provide, and great staff, so I'm looking forward to that.
okay, thank you. And hopefully you can get used to the west rim of the Grand Canyon.
Yes, I'm actually looking forward to exploring. I've already started making some visits up to the Wallapai Mountains, so.
Yes, I was going to mention, if you get homesick, you can just go up to the Wallapai Mountains and feel the love.
Yes.
Thank you.
Supervisor Angus.
Well, I want to welcome you, Denise, to Mojave County. I hear very good things about you. It's kind of bittersweet, because as we welcome you, we say goodbye to someone I've come to admire as a director and love as my friend, Patty Mead, and we're going to miss her. But I do look forward. We have a lot of things going on all around the county, and I look forward to meeting with you and letting you know about some of the things in my district.
Wonderful. I look forward to that opportunity.
I guess they're looking to me to make a remark. Understand that you studied kinesiology in the lower. Well, we're looking for somebody to bring a strong arm to this with flexing muscles, so how's that? Does that
I
work?
would love that opportunity, truly.
Very good.
Yes.
Very good. You're filling the shoes of a person that's been here a number of years and done a fine job, and we anticipate that you'll do a wonderful job also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome to the land of mosquitoes. That's another challenge for you.
Shoot, we don't have those in the mountains very much. Although that environment's changing very rapidly, so.
Okay, do we have a motion on the floor? No motion. I'll make the motion for the appoint Denise Burley to the Mojave County Public Health Director at range 29, step 6, or $102,440 annually.
Now, second that.
We have a motion and a second. Questions? There being no further questions, Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Unanimous decision. Thank you very much, Ms. Burley.
Thank you.
On to item number 55, discussion possible action for the transfer of $150,000 collected from the recent property sales currently held in Mojave County Construction Reserve Fund to the county's Economic Development Enterprise Fund, with the understanding that any economic development expenditures will be brought back before the board for consideration. I'm bringing this item to the board, and I will make a motion to transfer those funds.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? There being no further discussion, Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
No.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. On to item number 56, discussion, possible action for the transfer of $308,221 plus or minus collected from the recent property sales currently held in the County Construction Reserve Fund to the Kingman Law and Justice Center project for the purposes of augmenting the project funds. I brought this item to you, and I'll make that motion
I'll second it
for the
again.
transfer. We have a motion and a second.
May I just
Comment.
ask a question? And maybe this, I should have asked this for the previous item. If we didn't, what did we usually do with that money? Where would it usually go if it didn't go to these? Or do we always make that decision, a board make that decision?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Angus, basically, revenues go for operation and maintenance. And one-time realizations of monies, generally, if I was recommending what happens to those one-time realizations of monies, that goes to funding, that should go to funding something that is a one-time expense, like other capital expenditures, or economic development is a wonderful way to, if the board supports economic development activities, you know, it's a wonderful way to spend a one-time revenue to try to bring in business and additional revenues to Mojave County. In the case of this particular item, you know, our ability to fund the courthouse is going to be very, very tight. And depending on how much money we have available, it's going to directly relate on what we can actually accomplish within that courthouse. So we're just believing that this money is going to be needed in the future for a one-time expense on the Capitol building. And like I mentioned, it's not a reoccurring revenue. It's a realization that we've gotten from the sale of the bus barn property and the 802 building.
Right. And I think it's a great use of the money.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. On to item number 57 for the discussion, possible action, approve the adoption of Mojave County Board of Supervisors Resolution 2018-124, supporting H.R. 6738 Black Mountain Range and Bullhead City Land Exchange Act, which will expand access to public lands and economic development opportunities in the Bullhead City area of Mojave County. This is brought to us by Supervisor Angus.
Okay. Well, today we have Mayor Tom Brady and City Manager Toby Cotter. They came to me, asked if this board would support a land exchange that they've been working on for a very long time. In fact, I think the mayor was in Washington. It has to go through some congressional things, but it's been it's a great thing for the city. And do you want to come up and explain it? I have had some inquiries from people that they just wanted to know where the land is, and I said, well, tune in, because the mayor's going to tell us.
Chairman Watson, members of the board, staff.
Honorable Mayor.
You may recall that about 3 years ago, Don Laughlin gave a gift to Bullhead City residents for all of the hard work of his employees. He wanted to do something kind to his citizens in Bullhead City, so he donated to us 1,120 acres on 4 parcels in the Black Mountains. That land is located about 2 or 3 miles north of Union Pass, just on the south side of the Sleeping Princess, if you're familiar with where that's at. It's right there at the top of the hill. You can actually see it from Don Laughlin's penthouse if you see it, if you look with binoculars. It's 1,120 acres of basically wilderness land for the most part, but he also has a 2-story log cabin and an underground bunker, along with a fishing pond and all the facilities to make it a pleasant home. For tax purposes, he gifted it to us, but we have to keep it for 5 years. It was 3 years ago that he gifted it to us, and we are now looking at starting the process on either selling or exchanging, and our preferred method is to exchange it. So right now we have a bill before Congress that was dropped by Congressman Gosar just last month, H.R. 6738, which basically would allow us to transfer that 1,120 acres with the structures on it for basically Section 12 in Bullhead City. Section 12 in Bullhead City is basically, you would know it as Bullhead Community Park, where our Chamber of Commerce is located, and there's about 345 acres there. We believe that from what we can tell, the land should probably exchange for much the same value. But right now we lease Section 12 from the BLM. We've had a commercial lease on it for over 10 years, at which we were paying over $30,000 a year. And we just want to get out from underneath the thumb of the BLM. We want total control of that property so that we can develop it in the way we feel is best for the citizens of our area. So rather than trying to go through the laborious and time-consuming and costly land exchange process with the BLM, our consultants suggested that we try doing it through congressional action, so that's what we're doing right now. Last week I was in Washington, D.C., met with the majority and minority staff of the Natural Resources Committee. We met with Congressman Gosar's staff, Congressman Flake's staff. We also met with Congressman Kyle, and we also met with staff from the Department of the Interior. We wanted to brief them on what it was we were trying to do and ask for their support. And we walked away with that with very many positive feelings. So we now just ask for you to help support us with the resolution before you so that we can attach it to our bill, and when it actually comes before the committees that will soon, hopefully, be hearing it in Washington.
Very good.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Chairman Watson, I just want to say I totally support this, but like many of my constituents, we're all kind of curious as to what BLM might do with that property, but I guess time will tell.
Time will tell.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Johnson.
Is that 1,100 acres taxable right now?
Supervisor Johnson, no. The city owns it and it has been taken off the tax rolls when we received it. Should this transfer, you will get the federal government will get another 1,100 acres of land, which you can start receiving additional PILT payments. And should the BLM decide to parcel out the home and bunker and sell that, and we believe that there's a possibility that that could actually be done, then that would go back on the tax rolls itself.
Does that answer your question, Supervisor Johnson?
Yes, thank you.
And thank you.
Okay, if there's no other discussion, I move that we approve Mojave County Board of Supervisors Resolution Number 2018-124, a resolution of the Mojave County Board of Supervisors supporting federal legislative proposal HR 6738, Black Mountain Range and Bullhead City Land Exchange Act, which will expand access to public lands and economic development opportunities in the Bullhead City area of Mojave County.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Unanimous decision. Thank you very much. Good luck. Good morning, Captain Bishop.
Good morning.
How are you this morning?
I'm fine, thank you.
Super. We're on to item number 58, discussion possible action for the approval of inmate hospitalization intergovernmental agreement between Arizona Health Cost Care Containment System and Mojave County. Mr. Bishop.
Without a doubt, this will probably be the most interesting topic that you've had today. This essentially, these next two items, essentially just renew agreements that we have with Access, our Arizona Medicaid system. And the first one is titled the Hospitalization IGA, and what that does in some circumstances, it helps cover a majority of the healthcare costs when we have to send an inmate out of the facility and into a hospital as an inpatient status. I can tell you that just in the month of July, we had one inmate patient that his healthcare costs exceeded $200,000. With the agreements that we have in place with Access and Arizona's Medicaid system, we were able to, because this inmate was otherwise eligible for Access, they pick up the expenses of his hospitalization at some point in time. It's going to take a while, but they will cover those expenses. So that actually it results in a huge cost savings for the sheriff's office and our taxpayers, is that's absorbed in that. So this particular IGA helps us save those costs when we do have to hospitalize an inmate, which happens, you never really know, but it can happen for half a dozen or a dozen times a year, and it can become costly.
Very much so.
So I answer any questions, but I think it's pretty straightforward.
Questions for Captain Bishop?
Chairman Watson, I don't have any questions, but I will make a motion to approve.
We have a motion.
Second.
And second for approval. Any further discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And on item 59, approve the inmate enrollment suspension intergovernmental agreement between the Arizona Health Care Cost Containment System and Mojave County.
What this IGA does is essentially, from our standpoint, it's actually required of us to enter into this agreement with Access so that we reap the benefit of the one that we just approved. But typically what happens when an inmate who is on Access or eligible for Access becomes into custody, they're dropped from Access roles. Having this agreement in place and some of the processes that we have with Access is they don't get dropped, they get suspended, and then as soon as they're released from custody, they're reactivated. So the benefit there is more for Access, but also for the inmate who, once they're released from custody, as they re-engage services in the community, they don't have to re-enroll, which can take 90 days or as long as 90 days. They're instantly, or not instantly, but within 24 hours, they're reactivated. So it helps with that continuity of care for them as they go back into the community. And again, this IGA is pretty much tied to the other as a requirement. And there is no cost associated with that to us. We just provide data information every day.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman Watson, I'll make a motion to approve, and also wanted to thank Captain Bischoff for saving the county all of this money and being on top of the health containment and the intergovernmental agreements and everything to make this all come together and work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
I'll second that.
We have motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Motion to adjourn.
Adjourn. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh. Oh, okay.